Good evening. Welcome to the Nerd Socials review of Star Trek Discovery, Season 4, Episode 7. It's going to be the last episode for a while for Star Trek Discovery. This is exciting, but also a little sad. But way to finish off the new year. And so first of all, we're going to give you our spoiler-free thoughts about this episode. So this episode was titled But to Connect and features, we see tensions rising as representatives from across the galaxy gather to confront the threat of the DMA, the dark matter anomaly. And we see the continuing story about Zora's new sentience and the new questions, the difficult questions that this raises. So David, do you want to share your spoiler-free thoughts of this episode with us?
I like that this one doesn't have a lot of plot lines there, but they're all leading up to the same end point of the episode, which is what I appreciate though, instead of like we're going worried at different points in the story. But we see a lot of tension between a lot of people in the crew there, because there are some things that should go one way, and there are other people who prefer to go the other way. But the thing is that they have to understand is that either way is it's all by chance and all about trust and everything. So that's what they all learn and everything, whether it's within the Federation or within the ship itself. But I like this episode because we get to see the tension and how they deal with those tensions and situations there. Because everyone has their own opinions, obviously,
Yeah.
and while of course there are a lot of people that prefer to do their way because they think it's the right thing to do, but other people think, are you sure it is the right way? But we get to see not the response basically, but we get to see that the interaction with everyone else and how they perceive in one thing or another. But overall, I like this episode.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great episode. Really enjoyed it, and you're right. We sort of see the solutions, right? The tension is arising from the possible ways that the Federation and the non-federated planets can deal with this anomaly. So where we left off in episode 6 was that they realized that there must be someone, this new species 10C, unknown species 10C, behind the DMA, which changes the whole ballgame, because before they were thinking this is some sort of natural phenomenon, and now they realize that's not the case. And so of course now there's an actual or potential enemy, right? So like you said, like there's all of this drama around how do we fight an enemy we don't know, or how do we address this issue? And then Zora's sentience, right? We've realized that the computer is a lot more aware, is feeling emotions, and that raises a whole lot of questions that we started seeing Star Trek try to address before, when it comes to new forms of life, AI integrated, I guess, forms of life, right? So they're sort of revamping the story that they've addressed in previous Star Trek series. So I think that's it for our spoiler-free thoughts, right? So we can get our alert up and then move into getting to the details of this episode. So I think we should probably deal with it. If we deal with the story arc of Zora's sentience and how they deal with that first, and then get to the larger plot line in the story. So the episode actually opens with Adira and Stamets working with Zora on trying to figure out the coordinates for the origin of species 10C. Right, and they've been working at it for a week. Zora hasn't given them the coordinates, and they're sort of going back and forth about how that it's sort of taking too long. They're getting frustrated, and then Zora finishes or discovers the coordinates or figures out the coordinates, but now she won't give it to them, right? And I think for me, was a fear I had from the previous week, right? Like just where she didn't want to share information with Captain Burnham, and now here she is withholding this vital information, for her own reasons, and they sort of go from there. Right? They call in Captain Burnham to talk to Zora, and that's not super helpful. But what are your thoughts, David, up to this point about Zora and the sort of realizing the range or the depth of her emotions?
Well, I'll say this, and further on in this talk here, but it's like a nod between two episodes from previous Star Trek series. But the thing is that when her reaction when everyone's asked to give the coordinates of where the possibility where the DNA source is, she didn't want to do that. So but she didn't want to because she's worried about their safety. But I'm thinking like, wait, what just happened here? Is she acting as if because if you think back at the beginning of the season, we always thought, I assume that Zora is just a integrated AI or computer system. But it turns out that later in this episode, we find out that Zora is later evolved into a actual sentient being, which is thinking like, because not too many people would be like, how do I say, willing to give information there, like a regular Android or a computer. But in this case, she refused. So that's a little like a curveball right there, which I'm surprised because I thought maybe she would, but then she did not. So I'm thinking, what just happened here? Is she acting like a kind of a teenager saying, I don't want to give you a cookie kind of thing? So
she gives her reasons, right? And her reason is, she cares for Discovery and its crew, and she wants to keep them safe. So it's understandable from the point of, if this were a sentient organic being expressing this emotion, we wouldn't bat an eye. But because this is the ship's computer and this being has control over, and Stamets sort of throughout this story arc, you see Stamets expressing his what's the word I want? He's struggling with it because he's like, she could be afraid one minute and not want to, engage in like a battle type situation, or she could be mad at them and like blow somebody out in an airlock, right? And so just sort of not knowing what the boundaries, where Zora's emotions would lead her. So in this this plot, Stamets is sort of expressing that view of wanting to have more control over Zora, right? And she offers up this failsafe that would extract her and essentially destroy her from Discovery. So that's her sort of way of saying, hey, if you think I cross the line. And so Kovich has been brought in, right? Because once Burnham sort of talks to Zora and Zora still won't give up the information, they bring in Dr. Kovich. And he's evaluating the situation because Starfleet does not allow AI to be integrated into its ship systems, right? For good reason, because we've seen, episodes, Next Generation, original series, like that is there's always, at least one episode where they're sort of battling with artificial intelligent life that sort of outgrows its maker, right? And that's when you start to see problems start. And this is sort of what we're wondering is like, is this going to be a similar situation, or is this where it's headed? But Adira and Gray, and I thought this was, really touching, like the two characters in the show who sort of represent new beings, right? Beings that did not exist before. Adira in the form of being a human, the first human to be joined to a Trill, and Gray, whose consciousness was pulled from that Trill symbiont, right? And then Gray his consciousness was pulled from the symbiont and put into Synth's body, which had never been done before. So they both represent just very unique forms of life. And so they sort of stick up for Zora and like, we can't just extract her or want to be able to push a button and get rid of her, right? And I think, as you were saying before we started the stream, this is an argument or a topic that Star Trek has played with before. We saw as Data sort of progressed and evolved throughout over the course of TNG, he started to unlock different aspects of his personality and his capabilities, right? And he met resistance from, oh gosh, I forget the name of the Doctor Who. There's a season without Dr. Crusher, who is very like didn't like Data or understand Data when she first met him. But he also met that sort of same resistance, right? He's this android, looks very human, has human or grew into human emotions, and that bothered some people. And then in Voyager, you had the Doctor, who was a hologram, and he also sort of grew beyond his original capabilities, right? So you want to sort of chime in on that aspect of it, like how this is a theme that Star Trek has played with before?
I think, you hit on the nose right there, Chandra, that this episode, is like I said earlier, is like a nod of two specific episodes, one from Voyager, one from TNG. For TNG, it's called, I believe it's in the episode called The Measure of a Man, where Data is being judged by another like scientist, I forgot his name, because they're trying to see, they see that Data is too advanced for an android. They want to bring Data into Starfleet headquarters to be replicated, kind of thing, because his technology is far unique and far advanced and everything than any android at the time when the Federation. Whereas in Voyager, I don't remember this one. I think it's called Living Witness, where the Doctor, the hologram Doctor, like create a storybook. Mm-hmm. And then everyone's like, and the author, the publisher wants to like publish it, while the Doctor does not, because he's not a living being. And then there was a trial. Both episodes both have a trial to see whether or not that they count as either a living sentient or sentient at least. So that's why the interaction with Zora is a complete, not a trial basically, but basically a more understanding of Zora, an acceptance that she is now actually not an AI, not a computer, but she's a fully evolved, actual sentient being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, which is like a perfect nod, except on trial, actually, which is what I like. Because when I saw the episode, when I watched the episode, I was thinking like, oh no, don't tell me it's not a trial again in this one. But no, it's actually a debate. Mm-hmm. Basically, where to think that if Zora is actually think of Zora as a machine, or a computer, or as a person. Sentient rather. So that's what's got me very glued to the episode. That's saying that, okay, this is getting more interesting because now they're talking about it. Because now too many, like I said, like we done with an android and we done with the hologram. Now we're doing like a computer system evolved to a sentient being, which we all know that is caused by the ship's system and also the Spear Data back in season 2 merged together.
You're right. Because she says like the upgrades, she mm-hmm. thinks the upgrades from this century mm-hmm. sort of spurred some evolution in her programming, because she gives them access, right? She's like, you can look in, and they find this region of her programming that doesn't make any sense. And they, part of their realization that she is, more sentient than they realized is she seems to have dreams and what we might call a subconscious. So that sort of plays into the difficulty of the situation of what to do, how to treat Zora, how does she fit with Discovery, or does she still, can this relationship or this situation continue? And sort of that realization that, and it was something that she did not control, right? Suggested to them, like, well, this is new. She's more than the sum of just the Discovery initial computer, the Fehr data, right? She's more than the sum of those parts. And when Kovich sort of sort of in this discussion, she and Stamets, I think, trust each other a little bit more, and she does provide the coordinates for the origin of species 10 as a part of it. But then Stamets is still struggling because he's like, well, what about tomorrow, right? Like, we got the data today, but what's going to happen next? And I thought their solution was pretty, because there was a moment where when Kovich mentioned extracting the Fehr data or extracting Zora, Dr. Culber was like, well, would she get to choose her form? Because we saw Gray just got to choose a synth body that looked like his human body, but Zora, being a new being, she would have no form, as it were, that they could replicate, as it were. So I thought maybe that's where it was going to go, but then they sort of put it into context, because the problem is that Zora she's not a part of the chain of command, right? Because the fact that she had the freedom, or she was able to refuse a direct order from the captain is what the actual problem is. And that none of the crew sort of have that liberty, or if they do that, there are consequences, right? And she's sort of outside of that chain. So I like this solution that they came up with, that Zora can be a part of Starfleet as a specialist, right? Take an oath to so now she has a chain of command to follow, and Zora seems thrilled to do that as well, because you see, like, she for a while now, is from back in season 2, when the ship's computer first suggested having like a movie night or giving the crew downtime, that there was already some sort of affinity moving towards or care for the crew. And so it'll be interesting to see how they expand this story, or where this story goes, and how Zora continues to fit in and evolve throughout the series.
Yeah, I think you mixed it. I think it was season 3 where Saru was talking to the computer, and that's when Saru was thinking, "Wait a minute, did the computer gave me a suggestion?" Hence, movie night. So, yeah, but it's nice to see. So, what do we call her, like Ensign Zora or something? I mean, yes, she's a special.
Yeah.
I mean, she is a special, and technically she's a specialist. So technically, there's no rank, just like Gray has no rank, and then Adira, before she became a Starfleet, she was the Earth Sphere. She was part of the Earth Sphere Defense Force.
Yeah, and she's now. So
yeah, and now she's until the end of season 3, she became an actual Starfleet officer. So, I mean, technically she was a specialist at the time when we first met Adira, but now at the end of season 3, she became, I think it was lieutenant right now. So, but right now is that it's nice to see that Zora is more, how do I say, trusting right now, and then we get to see Stamets becoming more human in a way, because I always think that the Stamets is more like, it's too stoic and to act like robotic, because he always drives a solution and calculates all the time and finds a solution right there, but really this episode, I feel we see more of his humanity, but except towards a system, which is now a sentient being, actually. So it's nice to see that we see a different interaction of going vice versa, a computer interacting with a human acting, showing humanity to a computer system turned sentient life form. So it's just a very unique interaction that the writers make on this episode, is to this interaction with Zora, with the whole crew and everything. While the crew is just understanding and accepting more about Zora herself, if they put gender on her. So yeah, I really appreciate this episode of that plot line actually for that.
Yeah,
So,
and at the end, and I think Stafford, Stamets, and Culber, I think the relationship with Gray and Adira, and sort of seeing them as not as their children. Well, I guess as their children in a sense. I think that has softened him a little bit. Like his family has grown, and you see at the end where Adira encourages Gray to go visit Trill to do training. They'll go off with Gray for a few days, take some shore leave, and come back. But you see they form this nice little family unit, and I think that's what's had that effect on Stamets. He's less, he's more gentle, and he did acknowledge that in this episode where because Kovich, encouraged him to be direct with Zora. Because remember at the beginning of this, he wanted to Stamets wanted to. He came in and was like play computer, play music, and was trying to get them to have this conversation in a way that Zora couldn't hear. And Kovich was like, no, we need transparency and we need to talk it out, right? So I think that's been a part of his character's growth, having this family, having people that he cares about in his life, and just sort of and seeing and I think we sort of saw it as well in his previous episodes with Book, being more empathetic and being better at expressing his feelings is doing well. So yeah, and then guess we can move on to the main sort of meat of this episode, and this assembly that this group of leaders from across the galaxy who have come to Starfleet headquarters. So we got the inkling from the last episode that Tarka was gonna, present his idea. But while all of this business with Zora is going on, Burnham is really dealing with this assembly of representatives. I was really excited to see General Ndoye come back. She now represents a United Earth and Titan, right? So when we last saw her, she was the general of the Earth's Defense Forces, and now they have reconnected with Titan, and they are, functioning as one again. So that was great. And you see an Orion representative, obviously Vulcan and Romulan representatives. So
I think it meant Navarre,
right? Representatives from Navarre, and it's a whole host, right, of people. And President Rilka, president of the Federation, Rallick, sort of lays out the case, whatever we do, the DMA is a threat to the entire galaxy, and whatever we do, we need to do together. And immediately, General Ndoye pipes up about how we need to attack President Terina of Navarre is pushing a diplomatic angle. The Orion rep is we need to figure out how to protect ourselves, right? Have some countermeasures. And so, right away, everybody's jockeying to get their strategy of choice out there. What were your thoughts sort of heading into this assembly?
Well, it's nice to see that the Earth's forces are trying to consider joining back to Federation. Even the president, even the Federation president wants that to happen and everything, and she really wants to push that fact and everything, because she mentioned that her mother ancestral home was Earth, so which kind of clear that now we've confirmed that the Federation president is part human, which makes me think that I'm not sure. To all the audience out here, now that we've heard the fact that she's part human from Earth, how would you guys think that she is part Cardassian?
Yeah, she's part Cardassian, part Bajoran, and
Okay,
part
she's
yeah.
Okay, I think I might have probably missed that part there. So, but then when you think about it, it's 930 years in the future from the Kirk timeline up to their own timeline there, way past Picard, way past Deep Space Nine, way past the Voyager. So, I think there's something I missed that part, but yeah. So that means like her mother must be fully human, and then her father's side must be a mix of other alien species and everything like that.
Oh yeah, so there were Cardassian and Bajoran mixed. Because even in Deep Space Nine, right, they sort of covered that, how they were rejected by both societies essentially after the Cardassian occupation, and beyond, right? Because at least in that time period, they were seen as children of. I mean, they were sort of the products of war, right? But we're 1,000 years almost out from that, and so. But I mean, I guess it's not unusual. I think that Nathaniel and I had a discussion before about how every so often, like you see people who are, from two different species or mixed from two different species pop up, and they kind of, in a sense, they sort of gloss over the biology of it, like what must happen. But there was an episode, I think it was The Next Generation, where the galaxy, the life, the sentient life seeded in the galaxy was done so by a single race. And so I guess that sort of, we are all related distantly, right? But I guess related enough that there's compatibility still, reproductive compatibility in some cases. But she also said her mother never saw Earth. So, I mean, and we know, there are human colonies all over the galaxy, so that's not unsurprising.
Right.
But I think it also makes her a really good, in terms of, having somebody who does have such a mixed heritage. Not to say that she might not hold allegiance for one planet or one system more than others, but she can certainly appreciate how complicated it is, right? Like, I can't imagine growing up half or part Bajoran, part Cardassian, part human, and sort of not anywhere. I'm sure she met resistance on some sides of her family, right? But I think it does sort of make her an ideal person to head the Federation. But yeah, this is like sort of corralling these leaders. What did you think about the strategies that they were proposing? I mean, they seem pretty obvious, I think, right?
They're pretty obvious, and yet they all make sense. But the thing is that, as they all discuss, is basically the one true fact, the one true goal. What is the best solution to deal with the sentient beings that create the DMA? Whether it's hostile, whether they're hostile, or they're just experimenting and everything. Because just like the original Star Trek and TNG, they all said the same thing: scientific mission to explore new worlds and new civilization, which is what Michael Burnham said in the speech there, to actually oppose the idea of fighting and destroy what's created the DMA in the first place. But back to the main point of the strategy they discussed, like they all want to be cautious. They all want to make first contact. They all want to be prepared of in case they are hostile. Well, so far, Book and Taka are basically the only two wants to do action like right away. Because
no, they're not the only two, right? Because they have a
yeah, there's
vote.
more.
You do have a vote. So what? So just to back up, so the audience can
Oh yes.
or to fill them in. So Tarka, after they're discussing and they these possibilities, Tarka basically declares that he has a solution, and that would be to destroy the DMA using this device he's built, and the device would send a subspace cascade.
I think it's a
wave.
riff, but yeah, but same thing, yeah.
Yeah. So like to knock it out, destroy it, and that would get rid of the DMA. Because his point is, because they're arguing about species sense. He's like the DMA is still on the move. That is what you should be focused on, right? So he presents this alternate idea, and President Rilak is like, okay, these are the two competing ideas. We make peaceful first contact with species 10C now that we have the coordinates, or when we get the coordinates, or we destroy the DMA. And Burnham, because Tarka's idea is that Discovery is going to deliver this payload, right? And she's like, she wants more information. And it turns out he is using a type of device that has been outlawed by the Federation because of the damage that it can cause. It's the device would use an isolytic explosion, and this is similar to the devices that were used in the destruction or the attack on Kittimer. They've been outlawed because they can cause damage to subspace. They can make warp travel in a given area not impossible. And Burnham also raises that idea that if the burst travels back to the point of origin, like where the DMA is from, it could kill life on that side. And Tarka is pretty callous, and he's like, well, that's collateral damage. And I think Burnham, President Terina, and President Rilak are all like, we want to avoid war. But I also thought this was interesting in that, they all just came out of figuring out what caused the burn, right? And the realization that there wasn't a singular villain or bad guy behind the burn. It was, pure chance and bad luck. Or, scientific expedition that got stranded, and this child developed this sort of connection with dilithium, and their emotional response is what set off the chain reaction. And it got me thinking, like, you would think sort of everybody would want to be more cautious, because clearly you're dealing with a species that is more technologically advanced, right? You destroy the DMA, you don't know if they have more. You don't know, and if they're not hostile, and if it is an accident, and maybe you destroy them, and in return now you've started a war with a species that is more powerful, right? And you don't know anything about this species. So Buck and Tarka to me sort of came off like I understand, but I'm like, are you really thinking this through very clearly? And Tarka, so he does open up to Book, and he comes across a little bit more sympathetic, but ultimately still selfish, right? Because his reason, he wants the device that's powering the DMA. So he's not going to destroy the device that's powering it. He wants a device for himself because he wants to go to an alternate or parallel universe, right? And he shares this with Book. And so you sort of see him soften a bit, and you realize, like, he doesn't care about this universe. Was my, like, so he's crapping on these politicians about their discussions, but he, and they are basing, the ones who are in favor of diplomacy are making the argument that, they don't want to start a war, right? More people die that way. They want a brighter future. And I think Taka is like, peace out of this universe. Like, he doesn't care about their future. What were your thoughts, sort of, after his revelation about
Yeah, so it was a surprise when you mentioned that Taka was opening up the book about his upbringing, I guess, of how he got to where he is right now, because which we found out that he's technically from the mirror universe.
No, that's where he wants to go.
I mean, where he wants to go.
Well, it's
sorry.
I'm thinking like peaceful. His a scientific friend of his found a universe where there's no emerald chain, no war, or whatever, and they had planned to meet up there. So it's possible it could be different from the mirror universe we've seen before. I would assume so if there's no war.
Well, I mean, we've seen, like, in the previous Star Trek installations. Of course, it's a definite, like, canon that the mirror universe exists in all of them, and they did mention about timelines, and the Q continuum mentions about other universes and galaxies. So yeah, so that's very true. So we get to see what happens. But more to back on the point here, it's just that right now this is like, just you could say, because Taka is more. I mean, we know what's going on with Book. It's all about revenge, and be sure no one else is going through the same. No other universe or world will go the same thing as Quajon. I don't blame him for that. But the thing is that he needs to calm down, because he might cause, like you said before, Chandra, that he might cause another war or cause other civilians to die just because of his own civilization died itself. And then, well, Taka is more like, how do I say, selfish and all about the glory, basically. Because, like you said earlier, he wants the device that powers the DMA for himself. It feels like one of those people saying, I like that kid's product. I want to take it for myself, kind of thing. So, but at the same time, we get to see, like why is he doing this so eagerly to get it. So we'll see. But right now, there was later on in the episode where they decided to vote on what's the best course of action to get to deal with the DMA, or to do with it. Oh, no, not do. Deal how to contact in a way to a species N10. So and they made the vote, and then it's very cool how they make the vote. You just raise your hand. So it's
thumbprint. I was like, can we have that, please?
I know, that'd be so. That's like, it reminds me of like college, where you just hit a blinker. That's it, and let you know that I'm here. But in this case, it's like, oh, this is a good way of voting. There it is. So, and there's no way you rig it. Anyway, so, but anyway, but now we see the vote. It's like exactly what Michael wanted in the first place, even though she knows that Book won't like it, because we all know that because we all know the Federation is basically peacekeepers, and with the same, they're never warmongers. That's the thing, unless you're in the mirror universe, obviously. But Book, he's just disappointed in Michael, that he thought that Michael would like understand his feelings, but at the same time would jump the gun, literally, or phaser, to go at it right away when they found the coordinates.
What did you think about the speeches because they both make speeches like to try and convince the assembly, right? Like, which I thought was very, like it sort of sets them up. You know that they have this disagreement, but now their personal disagreement also has this very public facing aspect, right? Where Book he's the last
Quajon
alive, right? So he's case for destroying the DMA, and then Burnham is, this exceptional Starfleet captain. They've already saved the galaxy multiple times at this point. It is making the case like this is what she's like old school Federation. She's like, this is what the Federation was created for us to work together and to not be afraid, basically, right? Or at least not to act on our fear, essentially. But they both make these speeches, and you sort of see the looks going between them, and you realize like I felt like they were crossing a point that they can't come back from.
Well, we've seen
a couple, I guess.
Well, we've seen the disagreement and debates between Michael and Burnham. Michael and Burnham. My God, Michael and Book and Burnham, basically, because we know the book's point of view, which basically revenge on Quajon, or we know what Michael's point of view is to solve the matter to save millions and millions of lives of civilization, as the famous Spock would say, it's more important to save. More important. What's the phrase he always says? Like something basically saying that more important than the one. Like care of.
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank on that phrase.
Yeah, so Byrne goes by that phrase, which she holds true to her heart ever since she was raised on Vulcan and by Spock. So, not raised by Spock. I mean, grew up with Spock. But the thing is that the idea is that But the thing is that as we learn more in the episode, both sides are right now living experiencing a double-edged sword, because one side wants to do it diplomatically, the other side wants to take it out right away. But each way, there's an effect that they don't know what's going to happen. Either it's going to be bad or it's going to be something worse.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're competing strategies, right? Like it could be both of them, but I do think, right, if you go the route of destroying the DMA and taking, like, the best case scenario is that maybe it screws up subspace for that region of space for wherever it happens to be at the time they destroy it. The worst case scenario is that there are, effects beyond that explosive device, and that sort of sets off a war or like a hostile engagement with species 10C. Right? So, I mean, my feeling is like you make first contact, you try to learn something about your enemy, because that's I think the scary part, and maybe why people are so afraid and letting their fear guide them. Like, they don't know anything about this species. And General Ndoye says, their intent doesn't matter. It's your actions. And I get that, but I'm also like, their actions have been pretty powerful, right? And they don't talk at all about sort of any defensive mechanisms, right? Because if you do start something with this species, there doesn't seem to be anything in this galaxy that has the power to combat the right. So I mean, I feel like they should sort of be working on all of these strategies at this, like trying to figure out how do we diffuse the DMA, or how do we, alter its path, or whatever it is, like all of these things. And in addition to trying to make contact and learn about this species, and also working on destroying it, right? And obviously Taka's also not shared his information or his device with anybody else, right? But yeah, he's it was just frustrating. It's like, oh, okay, like you really are, like, you had this moment of sweetness, but you really are just a selfish asshole at the end of the day. And if this goes wrong, like it it'll screw things up for a lot of people. But yeah, but the assembly votes in favor of making first contact. And President Rilek, at least, like, she makes that gesture saying, like, she hopes that everybody who disagrees continues to work with them, and they're going to continue to share data. And Book leaves right? So he just, which I don't think was too surprising. But what were your thoughts on that sort of him?
Yeah, I was more focused on the reaction on those who did not agree to do first contact. Earth is one of those people that one of those organizations that decided not to do first contact, but engage and to eliminate the threat, even no matter what it is, or find out the true intentions for it. Book is no surprise that he walks away because he's upset that no one follows his way, and especially with Michael, because he knows that she has the ability to reach out to other somehow this ability to reach out to other civilizations and other planets, and he kind of hoped that with her she could bring the rest of the Federation and non-Federation planets to his steed, but that didn't work. So he ended up going rogue right now with Tarkus right now, and Tarkus brought some like X generation the spore drive into Book's system. I'm thinking, whoa, hello.
Yeah, that was pretty cool because you don't need a navigator anymore, right? So that should hopefully allow them to share it with more ships. But I'm guessing he took the only prototype. They were able to, and by the time Michael Burnham realizes what Book is doing, she gets to the bay just in time to see them blip out to wherever they go. So yeah, I guess, somewhat predictable, but you kind of, I sort of hope that Book would not go down that road, but Tarka would sort of be a rogue agent on his own, but yeah, no. So I guess we have to wait until the next episode to see. But there's also this really sweet moment between at the end there, Saru and President Terina, right? That relationship sort of evolving. And
is there like a thing going on between them?
There is. They clearly like each other. And he gives her this succulent plant that's used in the making of the salt tea. Because when he went to Navarre, she gave Saru tea. Didn't offer anybody else so much as a glass of water, but Saru got some salt tea. So they, it's sort of sweet to see like this quiet admiration that they have for each other. So we'll see where that continues to go in the rest of the season. But yeah, the trailer they showed for the second half of the season, it looks like the bridge crew are going to be they get sent after Book and Tarka, right? So it looks like they're going to be on more missions trying to track those two down and stop them from using the device, this device that Tucker had created. So it looked pretty exciting to me, the little snippet that I saw. Get to see more action, a little bit more gritty, because they go outside of Federation space. So we all know crazy things can happen when you don't have the protection and the order, I guess, of the Federation in place. Do you have any thoughts you want to share about about this episode, or what you hope to see in the rest of the season?
The one thing after the end of the episode, I really enjoyed it, especially the cliffhanger of that episode where Book left.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, come on, we have to wait till February 10th. February 10th, everyone. That's where the next episode comes in. So, but it's just something we have to wait though. But the thing is that okay, what's gonna happen now? Because we got a glimpse of and hints of what was gonna happen. Like one, they'll definitely will meet the sentient beings who created the DMA, and then they will have to figure out a jump or a way to get out to the other galaxy of where the DMA came from originally. And then we're going to see more of the more of Michael Burnham, like discovering the responsibilities of being a captain in something that she did not expect at all either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she embraced it, but she did not. What did she not expect? That there's a lot. She's gonna learn. There's a lot more to it that she may not be prepared for. Not any Starfleet captain, not even Picard, which is my favorite captain, by the way, it would be prepared for as well.
Yeah.
And even Picard himself in the season, it's a season trailer for season 2 of Picard. He doesn't know what's going to happen because Q returned. We're like, what the heck's going to happen? So back on Discovery, we don't know what's going to happen when they meet the actual species that create the DMA, or what's going to happen. And then when Targa talks about meeting this person in another universe, is that a hint that that Discovery crew might go to another universe? That's or could jump back in time, back to the original timeline. So who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know that. But I did read a few things that we did say goodbye to like Gray, who left because of her journey, because of their journey to be to become a Guardian at Trill. While at the same time, we get to see Zora is now an actual member of the Starfleet crew. I'm not sure what should be called. Either called ensign or cadet. I don't know, but we'll see. And unfortunately, we don't see Tilly. We don't know when Tilly's going to come back. All we know is that Tilly became a teacher at Starfleet headquarters. I mean, Starfleet Academy. But what I don't know what's going to happen either. I still have some theories of other things. Like, I think that Tarka was the one that created the DMA and somehow transported back in time, because the just think about it. The theory of space is that space is that when you go through space, you also go through time. Sometimes there's no like in the world of Doctor Who, there's no like linear paths. It's just it's basically a multiple sphere of time in space, infinite possibilities. So we don't know what's going to happen. So, I mean...
So basically, you think it's an experiment gone
wrong and everything. So, I mean, it could be Taka, or it could be that scientist, or maybe it could be that scientist that he mentioned about. So, we don't know. I guess we have to find out what happens. But I liked how this episode is leaning towards it. But the bad part is that they left with a cliffhanger. So we had to wait till February 10th.
When I saw that date, I was like, really? Like, how about you just take off 2 weeks like everybody else and come back in January? But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. So, all right.
Yeah, not even they didn't even announce about when Picard season 2 will release either. We know it's in 2022, but they didn't say when exactly. So
I think they're gonna drop more episodes of Star Trek Prodigy next week. So
I think it's next week. And then there's still reports that Star Trek Section 31 with Michelle Yeoh is still happening, but the thing is they don't know when they're gonna start doing production. Which that I'm very excited about, because I'm a Michelle Yeoh fan for years, but I'm also a Picard fan as well. But I'm thinking, when's that going to happen? But I guess we have to wait for Discovery of what's going to happen next. So,
cool. Well, I think that is it for our review of this mid-season finale for Star Trek Discovery, Episode 7, But to Connect. So